Did you guys bring your books with you? You've got a book?
Yeah, we just had one book.
That's just fine. I try to make this book, the book for this class, as cheap as possible because I know that they're obnoxiously expensive.
Yeah.
I don't know how much did this one cost you?
About, we bought it on used through Amazon for like $35, $36. Yeah, so it was,
that's what I was hoping for. Is that I was trying to keep it under 50.
yeah.
Not always easy. Okay, so it looks like we have a recording going for this class, and I'm going to, let's see, I can't tell what anybody can see. That's just great. Come on, show me what I'm looking at here. Okay, so they can see me, I think. I'm going to go ahead and connect, actually, to your classroom there in Maxwell. Is anybody going to be in there?
Probably not. The system probably won't be on. You can try though.
I'm going to connect anyway, even if it doesn't, even if it just connects to a black screen, because it gives me, yeah, just showing it just gives me something to work with here, so I can see what's going on. This system is so ludicrously dumb. Okay, so anyway, now I can see what they're seeing, and that's good because we want to see that. And let's take a look at, I don't think I can see my email from here. I have to, oh, no, I'm talking about mine, I guess. Now, did you, I was looking in my email and I can't remember if I saw pictures for your test or not.
I have videos on my phone, and then
Okay.
both of us took a bunch of pictures. We didn't know exactly how to get them to you though.
Okay,
I
well
can
this would be a
email them
perfect
to you.
time. Do you have your phone with you?
Yeah, I have my phone and my Chromebook.
What kind of phone is it?
iPhone.
Okay, we can connect, oh shoot, do I have, is it the new connector or the old connector?
Old.
Oh, I have an old connector. I'll go get an old connector.
Okay.
We'll just connect it directly to my computer and we'll just download. How does that?
Sounds good.
Actually, why don't you come with me, you guys?
Okay.
We'll do it.
Did you want to put in your phone?
No. Oh yeah, have right here. Odd piece of paper.
So on the, okay, so we're back now for Gavin's benefit. We went to try to download some things, but we're back now. We'll start this class again. So there's a question about how to turn in this stuff, and I think that Gavin has done kind of the right thing, and that is to just email me everything. And if you can put it all on a single file, like a single PDF, that's great. If you don't know how to do that, it's actually fairly easy. If you just go to Google and say combine or condense PDF, in Google, they'll send you to several websites that have this ability to take lots of documents and turn them into a single PDF document. If you don't want to do that, just email them all to me separately, and I'll just print them all off here like crazy. Not a big deal. I'm a bit behind in my grading, so I'm hoping to spend a lot of time this weekend just sitting and grading. One of my least favorite things in the world to do. But sounds like somebody might be in my classroom now. Let's go look. Maybe they turned it off. I don't know. Hello. Anyway, point being, just send it all to me and I will print it off and I will get started grading it. And let's see, did we do it? We did our first exam, right? So we have enough stuff to really get a kind of a preliminary first grade out for everybody to see how everybody's doing in class. I suspect from what I've seen so far that everybody's probably doing quite well in the class, so nothing to worry about. And we are scheduled now to be in the middle of Chapter 5. Let's look at our schedule here again really quick. I like to look at this regularly. Sideways. So, anyway. So yeah, we're in the middle, supposed to be in the middle of Chapter 5, and there are some homework problems from Chapter 5, 1, 2, 4, and then also 4 is this day as well, so I've given you 2 days to do Chapter 4, to do 4, which is essentially today, it's Friday, right? And then also 11 in Chapter 5. So 1, 2, 4, 11 for Chapter 5 homework, and then we will have Exam 5 on Wednesday, and that will be covering essentially the engineering design process that we're studying in Chapter 5. Then we move on to our rubber band driven car project that goes slow, and the slowest car, the shortest amount of distance for the longest amount of time. So anyway, I don't remember exactly where we got to last time, but I think that we got right to the point where we're going to look at the robotic hand for the space shuttle on page 137. We talked about the paperclip and improving the paperclip using the design process. We talked about color television. Man, my throat's all dry all of a sudden. And there are many, many things you can talk about as you're trying to explain the design process. But mostly what you want to do is find a good design project and kind of step through the process as if you were coming up with this design, as if you were being the engineer, and then go and compare it to what was actually done. So you can see maybe some places where you could have done something differently, or maybe they could have done something differently. So, Section 5.3's robotic hand for space shuttle is the case study. The first step in the design process was to identify the need and define the problem. What is the difference between identifying a need and defining a problem? Can you tell me that? You don't necessarily need to look it up. So when I say identify a need, and you're an engineer. What does that mean, identifying a need? We've done an engineering project already.
A need is you have something that needs to be done, but you don't have anything available that can accomplish that task.
Okay. And the first part of that statement is just right. The second part of the statement could be true, not necessarily true. Maybe you're identifying a need that has a solution, but it's not a very good one, right?
Okay.
So that can be the case. For example, let's go back 150, 200 years ago. Right? I need to write things down on paper. What did they do 200 years ago to write things down on paper? Well, they went out and they killed a goose, or they pulled a goose feather off of a goose, right? And they shaved down the end of that goose feather right where the quill would go into the skin, and they would shave it down to just the right angle. And the goose feather, of course, was hollow, and if they got that to just the right angle, they could dip in an inkwell, and the feather would fill up with ink. And if they had it just the right shape, then they could write with it very nicely, and it would hold the ink. It would come out very slowly. They were using a little bit of capillary science to hold the ink in there, and they'd dip it in the inkwell again, and they'd do this again. So, is that a great solution for writing?
It was a solution, but we've come up with better ones.
Yeah, so what have we come up with that's better?
Pens, pencils.
Okay. You're Kevin.
Yes.
Kyle, why is a pencil better than a feather?
You can also resharpen it.
Okay, so resharpening
You don't
is
have to do it in ink.
resharpening is actually easier than shaping the quill. Because the quill would actually wear out, and then they'd have to shave off the quill a little bit more, and they'd keep doing that until it got shorter, kind of like a pencil. But it was hard to do. You had to get out a knife, and it had to be a fairly sharp knife. And of course, you've been drawing with this thing, so there's ink all over it, so it's messy. And a pencil is much easier than that. Have you ever drawn with a quill? No. Have you ever drawn with a fountain pen that is like a quill, that you have to dip it in ink? Is it easy to draw it across the paper? Is it easy to drag it across the paper?
No.
Not very. Even the ones that they make today that are much easier than they used to be are not easy to pull across the paper because they're kind of rough and they kind of stick to the paper, and you have to be very light with your hands. It takes a skill and an art. It's kind of an art to do it. How about a pencil?
You can just do whatever you want with it.
It's really easy to draw across the paper. The reason is because pencils are made with graphite, and graphite is naturally it's a natural lubricant, essentially. It slides over things, and that's because of the atomic structure of the crystalline structure. It just has a tendency to slide over itself. So when they discovered, and they did the same thing with lead, that's why they call it pencil lead. Lead does a very similar thing. It slides over things very nicely. So when they discovered this ability to make pencil lead, and discovered a way to make pencils nicely, it took them a while to figure it out, they replaced a lot of these ink pens, And also, what's another advantage to pencil lead?
You can erase it.
You can erase it, right? It comes off of the paper much easier than ink did. And there are many other reasons that it's better. Pencil lead sticks on the paper, stays on the paper. Ink, and when you were done, you had to blot it with like a powder to make it dry and to make it stick to the paper. You had to do all kinds of things to make sure that the ink would stay and the ink would fade out. Have you ever been to Washington, D.C. before? No? If you ever go, I would recommend that you go to the archives and see the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. They still have those original documents, but go soon because they're fading, because the ink that they use to make this stuff fades.
Wow.
It's a naturally occurring dye, and it fades over time. They keep it in a very dark room under very, very dark, very, very low lights, and you have to squint to kind of see John Hancock's signature, even though it's like this big. So there are a lot of advantages, and those things came with needs. We needed to write on paper, but then eventually we filled that need, but we created another need. We need to do it easier, right? We need to do it faster. We need to erase it, right? There's an old adage that says, that goes like this: luxury, now little luxury, don't you cry. You'll be a need by and by, right? Some things that we consider not needs because we have bigger needs eventually become needs because we fill the bigger needs. We filled the need of writing, now we need to be able to erase. Before we didn't need to erase, we just needed to write. That was good enough. You know, we need to be able to get from, you know, point A to point B, and so we invent the horse and carriage. And eventually we need to get there fast. You know, just getting there is not good enough anymore. We need more. And human beings are just this way, right? So defining the need can be kind of interesting. It can kind of be this ongoing process where the needs and the wants switch places, where, you know, wants become needs, desires become needs. So defining the need can be quite an interesting process. So now we go to the robotic arm. What is the need? We've built a space shuttle. We've gone into space, and the space shuttle was mostly designed to put large objects into space because it's very difficult to put large objects in space, and the space shuttle is capable of putting very big things into space. Like the space station, most of the parts for the space station were taken up by the space shuttle. The entire Hubble Space Telescope was taken up in one piece, and the Chandra Space Telescope was taken up in one piece by the space shuttle. And those are huge, you know. Those things are bigger than this room, much bigger. So they're very big objects. So what is the need? We've now got this space shuttle that's going to take these big objects to space. What is the need? What do you think is going to be the need?
Move that stuff around.
Okay, you need to move that stuff around, right? It's not going to be convenient because the space shuttle had those doors on the top that would open up, but the stuff would be strapped down inside and it would be bolted down inside. It would be a lot of work to do. So not only do we need to move stuff around, what else do we need to move around? If it's all bolted down in there,
Gotta move around the bolts and
well, who's gonna do the bolts? Somebody's got to go out there and do that. That's not something that's easy to do robotically. You can do some of it robotically, and so you'd like to have a robotic arm that has a lot of bendy to it and a lot of tools on the end of it, but you also have to move people around with this thing. So we've got some needs already. We want to move stuff around. We want to move people around. Okay. So now that we've identified two needs, let's define the problems. What's the problem associated with that need?
how are you going to power the robotic arm?
Okay, so why is power a problem?
Because you're in space and you have a limited supply of it.
Okay, that is a serious problem. So one of the main problems of this is that we're in space. We carry everything with us. We don't carry everything back. You know, garbage in space they just throw out into space. But we have to take all of our power with us, or our sources that are going to create power. You know, they could do solar panels, for example. The solar panels aren't extremely efficient. So it's got to be something we can power. These are big objects we're going to take out of the bay of the space shuttle. So what kind of problem could be associated with that particular issue?
To get something big, you have to have a big robotic arm.
It has to be a big arm, has to be
Strong.
a strong arm, right? So it has to be both big and strong. Well, we also have to get this dumb thing into space. So what else is a problem we're going to have to overcome?
You have to get another space shuttle up there.
You have to get it on the space shuttle, and what did you say? Weight. Weight is a huge issue in space. Size is a huge issue on the space shuttle. So you have to get it on there, you have to squeeze it into a small space, and you have to be able to lift it, because the space shuttle only has a certain amount of thrust they can get up there. So can you see the difference between defining needs and identifying and defining a problem? So identifying needs, what is it we need to do? The problem is, how are we going to do it, right? So there's the difference right there. And you can create statements that involve both of those things. So a need statement might be, we need a robotic arm to do things like, you know, maneuver and manipulate large objects on the space shuttle, and to move around people in the space shuttle bay. And then a statement, then a defined statement of our problem might be something like, the robotic arm must be light enough that it doesn't affect payload more than a certain percentage. It needs to be strong enough to maneuver things with this certain amount of mass. It needs to be big enough so it can handle, you know, I mean, we're talking more detail, and it's defining the actual things we're going to have to do with this, you to achieve this need. So that is the beginning of this. And of course they did that with the space shuttle arm. And you can see this picture of it on page 137. Let's take a look at that. The screen's all went to sleep. Let's see here. And a nice picture of our robotic arm. I actually think I'm going to go online and get a better one. We're going to take a look at some of the robotic arm stuff here. So here's a great picture of it, but not a very big picture of it. This one, I hate small pictures. Let's do big pictures. Let's see, search tools, size large. Okay. So here you can see a nice picture of the robotic arm. Woo! That's really big. Yeah, oh, no, we can't see it, sorry. Over here. Okay, I'll just go over here. And you can see that it actually has many different bends in it so that it can do lots of different things. And in fact, if we could see up closer up in here, which we can zoom in up here, we can start to see some other details. You start to see some interesting features of the robotic arm. So tell me some interesting features that you notice as we zoom in this corner.
It looks like a camera, maybe.
How could a camera be useful on something like this?
Yeah, because then you can...
See where you go.
At some point, somebody decided that one of the needs of this project was to be able to see what they're doing, right? And probably that was pretty early on, but it makes a lot of sense for the cameras to be on the arm itself because the arm is going to have to be up above the base, so it's going to give you kind of a bird's eye view of what's happening. You can actually use this camera to control to see what you're actually doing and to help control the arm, right? Can you notice anything about this joint right here? Can you see this? There's kind of a fabric around this. It's I think a Kevlar, and it's probably clearer on that screen back there. Can you see what's going on in the fabric right there?
Yeah.
It's wrinkling in a very specific way that makes you think that this thing is doing what? Twisting, right? So that arm is not just like, it's not just a hinge. It's kind of like an elbow, right? It twists and it bends. It does both of those things. Could that be useful? Absolutely. It gives you more degrees of freedom, more degrees of movement, right? More different ways that you can manipulate this arm. So absolutely that's important. You can see that kind of even more, oops, gracious, over here. You can almost, you kind of see the joints here where they have different joints, kind of like a universal joint in a car that goes multiple directions, right? You kind of see that that's the case here. So obviously, they have some engineering going on here. And of course, since it was engineered and made in Canada, they got to put their name on it. You know, this is Canada. Let's take a look at some other pictures, see if we can see any other nice engineering. Holy moly. Big little tiles. See if we can see any other. Here's a very close-up picture of the end of this thing. What's going on? I want this thing closed. Gotta love it. There we go. So here, let's look at another So here's another different thing here. Well, not a different thing, but here's another view of another shot of what they do with this thing. So here it's actually connected to some kind of something. I don't know what that is. It's something. Probably something they took out of the bay there. Interesting. And you can see that the arm actually has multiple ends to it. So here's the end connected to this thing, but this end is obviously a different piece of the arm, right? And what's it doing? What's this end doing? Oh, maybe it's, I don't know what it's doing, but it's doing something. Maybe it's a camera, who knows? It does have multiple things on it. It has multiple uses, multiple attachments, lots of different usability. You can see here that it can reach out quite far. It can be extended. It can be used for short use. Here's a nice kind of engineering drawing of it. So, anyway, so robotic arm in the space shuttle. What is our particular need in this book going to be? We actually want to make a hand on the robotic arm that can grab something. That's my need statement. I want a hand or some kind of gripping device on the end of the robotic arm that when it gets to something, it can wrap its little hand around it, grab onto it, and we can manipulate that object. Right? So that's my need statement. What kind of problems might we run into?
Grip strength.
Okay, so we might have to define a problem about how strong this needs to be. Okay.
It has to be, fingers have to be long enough to get around whatever they're gripping.
Okay, so we might have to worry about size issues, right? So what is it we're trying to grab onto? So that might be a part of our problem statement. The need is I need a hand on the end of this thing, and the problem statement says, we'll say something like the problem statement might be we're going to build a hand for the end of the space shuttle arm that will be capable of lifting something this weight, has a size dimension smaller than this particular size, smaller than maybe 10 inches, and we want it to be able to rotate, and we want it to be able to sense when it's actually gripped the thing so it doesn't break it. Maybe something like that, right? So our problem statement like that. And we can go through and we can come up with all kinds of problems. But in the end, we have to kind of leave that behind and start to put some details to this. The need statement was pretty basic. The problem definition was a little more detailed. But we need even more details if we're going to be engineers. And so we move on to the next step, which is step 1 is to identify the need and define the problem. And step 2 is to assemble a design team, right? That's on the next page, 238 or whatever, 138. So for a robotic arm like this, what kind of a design team would you have? Who would you put on a design team if you were going to design the hand on the end of a robotic arm like this?
Maybe some mechanical engineers, electrical engineers.
Okay, you need mechanical engineers for sure. Anytime there's something that's moving, you need a mechanical engineer. Electrical engineers you might need because electrical power is a kind of power that the space shuttle has. So you might need electrical engineers. Who else might need?
Maybe a materials engineer to figure out what to make it out of.
Okay. So materials engineers, why do we care about what it's made of?
Cost.
Cost and weight, right? NASA doesn't always worry about cost so much. They don't care if their toilets cost $100 million or whatever. But they actually do have to worry about that, especially these days. People, the reason they ended the space program in the United States, they didn't really end it, but they kind of curtailed it because we can't be spending so much money on this if we're not feeding our people. And I just kind of rub my head and go, are you kidding me? Have you seen how much money we put towards the social programs in this country? Trillions of dollars every year. And the entire budget of NASA is not even 1,000th of a trillion. It's not even a billion, I don't think. Right now, I think it is. But sorry,
Right now?
What's that? No, I'm teaching another class right now. So.
Just one quick question. We have an exam today on engineering.
I'm sorry?
We have an exam today.
I don't know.
The syllabus says yes, but you didn't.
Oh, on the old schedule it said we have an exam, but I don't think it does on the new one. Does it?
So I'll look at the new one.
I'll talk to you in a little bit. I got to finish this class a little
Okay.
quick.
No, I mean, one of the guys asked me, tells me, like, we have an exam, you like, freak out, like, alright.
Sorry about that. He's one of my engineers in the next design class that we teach for the more advanced design class. But anyway, so materials engineer, good idea to have. What else? Are there people that you might put on your team that may not be engineers? A lot of engineers forget that somebody's going to have to use